preparing. Sportscast, June 16th, 2020. If you haven't yet, please subscribe in all our channels. Periscope, iTunes. Sportscast, June 16th, 2020. Welcome to the Sportscast. If you haven't yet, please subscribe in all our channels, YouTube, Periscope, and iTunes. And if you're in iTunes, please leave a rating and a review. It will help us out tremendously. And visit us on thesportscast.net, thesportscast.net. This episode is brought to you by InstaBible app. You can download the InstaBible app on the iOS App Store. We got Justin Riley on the line. We got another special today, another Alabama series. Justin, all the way from Mississippi. How you doing?
Man, I'm doing good. Glad to be here. Glad to be back talking about Alabama football. Never get tired of that.
So you got another special guest, Justin. You're becoming famous. I think you're being hanging out at the Alabama Country Club, and you've been getting all these interviews. Tell us about this next interview we have tonight.
I don't know about the Alabama Country Club. I don't know if I'm quite in that tax bracket to be hanging around there, but I will say that I have been tremendously blessed to be able to find some great guests from Alabama football history. It's been awesome, and today is no different. First of all, I want to give a shout out to the fine folks at Rama Jammas. Your game day experience is not complete until you stop by there, especially having one of their famous burgers. So, all right, without further ado, I've got to introduce to you a man that was all SEC freshman first team. He was the hero of the 1999 LSU game that sent Alabama to the SEC championship. He was a 1999 SEC champion. And I had to say, he is one of the most physical players to ever step foot on a football field. Ladies and gentlemen, the great, legendary Marvin Constant.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide, sir.
Roll Tide, roll. Yeah. Marvin, really appreciate you coming on. Alabama player. Tell us what you've been up to lately.
Just working out, with this whole quarantine, there's not much you can do. Just trying to stay in shape and mentally and physically, just, because times like this is when a lot of people tend to fall off the wagon. So just trying to maintain my sanity more than anything else.
Let's begin in your high school career. First of all, how did you begin with football? And then we'll go into high school.
Well, football was something that I've enjoyed for as long as I can remember, and just watching my older brother play and watching people on TV play. I used to collect those little mini football helmets that bubble gum machine. So it was just something that I always wanted to do, and from the first time I stepped on the field, it was just something that I loved. It was never any doubt. There was never any is this what I really want to do? It was no. This is what we're doing as long as we can do it.
Absolutely. Now, you didn't always grow up an Alabama fan, so who exactly did you cheer for? And I know there's a little story behind about that when it came to your recruiting. Can you go into that a little bit?
I like the Florida Gators growing up. How could you not like Steve Spurrier and what he was doing down there? I mean, it was the old ball coach,
Right.
So, when they came to my house, somebody dimed me out to the coaches because I was already committed to Alabama at the time. Yeah, I got quite the phone call and was demanded to report to the football complex immediately.
Wow.
Yeah, that was not pleasant. So,
were you ever contacted by other teams? Like, was there a close second you were kind of thinking about, or was Alabama always the one?
Florida made a good push, so But when I had over 50 scholarship offers, so it was pretty much wherever I wanted to go. I had the whole college football powerhouse all in the little fish bowls, so I could have went wherever I wanted to go.
Now, can you refresh us? How was Alabama back then? Were they like world beaters back then, or were they kind of like not the best in the country? But how was the ambience back then? for Alabama?
Alabama had just won the championship in '92, but Florida won it in '96, which was my junior year of high school. So you can see how that would be appealing to a person. Alabama had just went through coaching changes. They had just Coach Stallings had just retired, and Mike Dubose was taking over. So it was a lot of factors that came into play. It's like, okay, it was uncertainty. You don't really know what you're getting from a first, second year coach. Then you got a ball coach over there. So, it definitely made it difficult.
Yeah, you came to Alabama at a very interesting time, like you just said. It was year 3 under Mike DuBose. We were in the process of rebuilding. I remember walking out of the Aquatic Center weight room after a workout one day that fall in 1999, walked over to the practice field fence, was able to peek through a little hole. And one of the things that stood out to me most was you. You looked like you were the unprecedented leader of that defense. I mean, I thought a veteran was there. And I'm serious. Names like Cornelius Bennett, Derek Thomas, Keith McCants started popping up in my mind, and that you were going to be that next dude. Can you go through what your mindset was going into Alabama, and then also falling in line with those great linebackers?
Alabama has always had a history of great linebackers, so there's a standard, You never want to let the standard drop below what the standard is. And for me, I wanted to write my own standard. I was always that person that said, hey, y'all were great, but I want to show you what the next level of greatness looks like. So I went into that process. I trained my butt off my senior year of high school. After the season was over, I trained even harder. That summer, I trained even harder. My whole mind state was, hey, we're about to go over here, and we're going to show these people something they've never seen before in life. We're going to dominate every individual that lines up in front of us. We ain't cut nobody no slack. Everybody's going to get the same level of work across the board. That was my mind state.
Which game do you really cannot forget playing with Alabama?
Ooh, one of my favorites was definitely playing against Tennessee, playing against Jamal Lewis and Travis Henry. I mean, if you go back and you watch that tape, some of those shots that I was putting on those two, you know anything about football, you know that those were two pretty amazing running backs, 2 first-round running backs. So, yeah, oh, man, that was an amazing game. I had something like 17, 18 tackles in a sack or something. But, I mean, it's just the shots that I was putting on those two, when all year all you seen them doing was running people over, and then here I am straight handling them.
Yeah, hey, I definitely appreciate you laying those shots on Tennessee most of all.
Justin, Tennessee has been brought up these past 2 weeks. Quite interesting how the times have changed.
Absolutely. One game that I can think of that season, there's a couple of them actually, but this one was kind of the turning point of the season. In 1999, we had a very special group of talent. I really believe that we had something in the works, maybe even a title run. But that all kind of came to a screeching halt one night in Legion Field in Birmingham. We got upset by Louisiana Tech, which I still remember to this day. So you guys were at a crossroads. People were starting to write us off. Coach DuBose is on the hot seat again. What turned things around at that point? And kind of talk about the leadership on that team and what the process was going forward.
That game when we lost to La Tech, that definitely was something, nobody was prepared for. But I will say this. I think I only played like 2 or 3 snaps that game. Because, with Tim Rattay and that high-powered offense, all they were doing was throwing the ball. So I didn't play much that game. But I did block a field goal in a little bit of time that I was out there. But
yes. I remember that.
Yeah, so we'll put that game behind us. But I will say this. I think the coaches realized that not having me on the field was definitely a detriment to the defense as a whole. So when we actually played Florida a few weeks after that, I pretty much didn't leave the field. It's like, I can cover it, guys. This is not rocket science. I'm just as fast as the running backs. So that game, I played a lot more. So, but honestly, I just think that had I played more that game, we wouldn't have lost that game. Because again, when you lose the person who pretty much controls the tempo, the momentum, and the attitude of the defense, and he's on the sideline, you know, that's not easy to find a guy to step in and pick up that slack, because not everybody's that type of person that's going to lead not only through their words but through their actions.
Right. You were a huge star in high school. How did you make that college transition so easily for you? How you were so college proof?
Well, I was benching 460 in high school, squatting 600 pounds, so it's kind of easy to just walk over there.
Kind of helps out a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, it helps out when you're almost the strongest person on the team and you're still in high school.
I do want to go back to that Florida game. Well, you know, Florida, that was a very special moment for us. We beat them not once, but twice that year. But that game in Gainesville, pretty big deal. One, we snapped that 39-game home win streak. And then two, you're able to go up against the team that you grew up loving. Kind of talk to us about how it made you feel, what the atmosphere is like for you, just everything.
I loved playing in the swamp. You know, that whole atmosphere at Ben Hill Griffin, it's amazing. You know, when they do that thing between third and the fourth quarter, that whole side-to-side rock, you know, it's a lot of culture there. It's an amazing place to play. But to be there to end that 39-game home win streak was amazing. Because just like I liked Florida growing up, I liked Alabama as well. But, you know, I was more connected to Alabama. You know, I sold coats in Bryant-Denny. At one point, I sold programs in Bryant-Denny. So that's what I did most of my life. You know, it was activities in Bryant-Denny. That's where I got my taste of college football first and foremost before I, you know, TV, any of that. It was in Bryant-Denny. So to be a part of that team from Alabama, from Tuscaloosa, to go to Florida and end that win streak of theirs, considering the fact that Florida was hot. Like I said, fresh off a championship in '96. They won several SEC championships. So, you know, they were truly the team to beat.
Which player from Florida that you had like the most respect of for?
Tight end, Aaron Kinney. Oh, my God. So we were watching film that whole week leading up to that game, right? And so we watched the film against them in Tennessee. You see Dwayne Goodrich and Deion Grant. They throw the seam route to the tight end to Kenny. He catches it. When I tell you, you see Deion Grant and Goodrich, they both purposely dive out of the way to not tackle this man. This was a massive man. So when we're playing him, I think Tony Dixon has him held up. I ran in from the side and I hit him with everything I had. That man did not move.
Oh, man.
This is not what I'm used to. I'm used to hitting people and it's just, okay, it's over. That man did not move.
Wow.
Yeah. And the funny thing about it, if you go to the Bryant Museum, on my picture in the Bryant Museum, when you search Letterman, when it has my All SEC letter beside the picture that they have, is that picture of me tackling him on that play when I hit him and he didn't move.
I'm definitely going to have to revisit that. That's a great moment, brother.
Yeah, he did not move. I'm like,
wow.
This
was something different for me.
Was this known by the media or this just like exclusive stuff you're talking about?
This is exclusive, man. I've never even told anybody this.
Only on the Sportscast, Justin.
The first people I told this to, outside of Tony Dixon, me and Tony laugh about it all the time because me and Tony are good friends. We always laugh about it. Like, yeah, man, you remember when you ran in there, you thought you was going to do something? Yeah. That was the one time.
I think he still has nightmares. What do you think?
Yeah, that was a rough day. So
yeah, for him. Oh, now sticking with the SEC, that day, or 1999, man, the conference as a whole was loaded. I mean, look at us alone. I mean, yourself, you know, Sean Alexander, Andrew Zal, Cornelius Griffin, Freddie Millen, Salim Rashid. You know, that's just us. But then the SEC, you look at Deuce McAllister, Jamal Lewis, like you mentioned earlier, Travis Henry, a bunch of other people. Can you talk to us about
all those guys at Auburn, man? Yeah, it was guys everywhere. Every week it was a different challenge.
Can you talk to us about what it meant to play against teams like that, and then also how that talent level stacks up against the talent level of today's teams?
Playing against teams like that, man, it made you want to be better. Because again, I went into every game just the way I went into every practice. I always told my teammates the same thing I told my brother. You will not catch me on Sports Center in somebody's house. that was my one. Like, no, I will not be that guy. So I always went into it knowing, okay, that's Deuce McAllister, that's Jamal Lewis, Travis Henry, Cedric Wilson, Dante Stallworth. I mean, the names were across the board, but it didn't change the fact that I knew I'm not going to let you get the best of me. I'm going to get the best of you, and I'm going to smile, and I'm going to talk crap the entire time while I'm doing it.
Yes, sir.
Wow.
Yeah.
Let me piggyback what Justin just mentioned a little bit. How would you compare the SEC now compared to back then? Is it like, has the level changed? Is it become better, or is kind of similar to what you see right now?
I'm going to say this. I'll say the SEC now, you have more of those, handful of teams that are good. You roll the SEC back 15, 20 years, and you could have been beat almost any Saturday. Because, again, you talk about players, you were talking about all the running backs. You don't forget Mississippi State had James Johnson and all those guys back then, too. You had teams across the board that were just good. Georgia was good. Florida, everybody was good with the exception, you're always going to have your little down teams, your Arkansas, but Arkansas did beat us one year. So it goes back to that point. Any given Saturday, you could have been beat back then. Whereas now it's almost like, okay, we know who's going to win. It's just by how much.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Now I'd like to move into probably one of the most important games, and of course that's the 1999 LSU game. Going into the game, that was probably the most pivotal game of the season. If we win, we grab that West title, and we're head to Atlanta. Of course, the year previously, we go into an epic battle, come from behind victory, and we beat them in Baton Rouge. And this game will be no different. I remember being in the student section and witnessing the whole thing, and then that very last play happened, and it just looked like a war zone. You were on the field, Canary Knight, a few other players, and I was just sick, man. I was beside myself. Can you go through that process, and tell us a little bit about what happened at that moment?
Well, it's one of those things. I actually watched one of my good friends, who is still one of my good friends, Kenny Smith. I talk to Kenny regularly, go down to play before. So, to see him hurt, you try to put that out of your mind. Then you go out there to do a job. If they score, it's over. So you got to stop them. So, the whole time you watch the video, I'm out there smacking hills. I'm telling everybody, hey, let's go. We got to do this. So I drop back to where I'm supposed to be, snaps the ball, tight end releases out. I see him, so I kind of go with him. But then I see Booty kind of roll, and I'm like, is he going to throw? Is he going to run? And then at the last minute, he runs. And when I go over to the left, I slide, and I plant it, and I jump. And when I jumped, I came down on my one leg with my weight, his weight, Cornelius Griffin, Reggie Miles' weight, everybody's weight on my one leg. So as soon as it happened, I knew I was in bad shape. But the funny thing about it is I was actually talking to Josh. I talked to Josh last year sometime. We were talking about it. Josh was like, yeah, Donardo told me the whole time to just run the ball. We were never going to throw it. I wish I had known that. I just went talking to the backfield and just got it over
with. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, go ahead, Justin. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No. You're up.
Well, I was just going to go, and to the 2000 season, we were all pretty optimistic that you were going to be able to come back. And you did make a go at it, but you were only able to play 50 snaps in 5 games. 2001 came rolling around, and you decided to end your comeback bid. But 2004, you did have the opportunity to participate in the NFL Combine. Can you go through those processes and then just kind of tell us why it didn't exactly come together for you at that time?
Well, the biggest issue that I had was the problems with my knee. Things just weren't done right, and after about 5 or 6 months, I'm like, something still doesn't feel right. So I ended up going to my high school team doctor, Dr. Barrow, and I asked him to scope it. And he seen what all was still wrong with it. And I'm like, yeah, it's a disaster. It's like, yeah, I could tell, there's a lot of stuff that's, still wrong with it. So he ended up setting me up with Dr. Andrews and Dr. Kane in Birmingham. Dr. Kane, I on his current team, Dr. Oh, man, that's my guy. I love that guy. And he redid pretty much everything. And from the point that he's redone everything, I've been fine. But it took me stepping away from the team and doing everything on my own, to get to a point to where, okay, now let's get to where we got to be. You got to focus solely on you, because as long as I was over there, the previous team doctor, he wanted to still see me, but, wasn't going to allow that to happen. So, it was like I had to make the decisions that were best for me at the time. So, and for me, that was going to Birmingham, the doctors outside of the team, and letting them fix me. And after Dr. Kane fixed me, oh my God, man, it has been nothing but amazing. Like my knee, the knee that I injured actually works better than my other knee these days. So, yeah, he did a great job, man. And then I went on, played arena football for a few years. I never even had to ice my knee. I never had any problems. So, I can honestly say with 1,000% certainty, had he worked on me from my original injury, yeah, I would have been fine. I would have never missed any time. I've been ready to follow the season, hands down. Because again, I've been perfectly fine ever since that guy worked on me, man. So, it's just one of those things you look back in hindsight and say, hey, I wish, I had went to him from the start. But, you can't turn the hands of time back. So you got to take the good with the bad. And I'll tell anybody, if you're injured and you're not comfortable with your team doctor, man, don't do it. Get a second opinion. Go see whoever you got to see to get done what makes you comfortable. Don't let anybody pressure you into that decision.
Were you hearing any rumblings from NFL scouts saying, "Hey, I mean, if you were healthy, you could have gone like in like the first round and in the first round or second round"? What rumblings were you hearing?
Yeah, I was a first round pick, hands down. That wasn't an issue. And then even after I was fixed and I played arena football, the Dolphins ended up bringing me in for a workout as a free agent. So, I would have been fine, had Dr. Kane fixed me from the start. But
yeah.
And
how was the opportunity with arena football? Was it a good level of football, you thought?
I mean, I dominated them as usual, like I dominated everybody else. So when you say levels to me, that's kind of like, I don't know what a real level of competition really looks like to say, hey, this was a tough one. Because I've only seen a handful of guys who I can say, hey, that guy there, he had my number. And I can count on one hand. And I don't need all of the fingers to count for that one.
Yeah, because here at the Sportscast, we always talk about, are there NFL scouts at arena football? Are they at the CFL? Yeah. Were you seeing a huge presence there? Or
was that who?
I mean, were you seeing a huge presence of NFL scouts at the arena football games? Or
there were always scouts there. So, that was one of the things about it. That's when the guys from the Dolphins seen that I was healthy. And I was like, okay, let's give him a shot. Let's see, if he's really, 100% pass my physical and everything. I had a great workout with him, but they just decided up going in a different direction with another guy, with a younger guy with no injuries, which I get that. I understand that. You want to make sure that your investment is a solid investment. So.
Absolutely. You talked about how things weren't quite done right and you weren't able to quite make the comeback that you could have made had things been done right from the onset. And you decided to call it quits, or it was done. And one I've listened to in various podcasts and I've read some articles, you went into a dark place. You felt isolated and that you didn't really feel like you could talk to anyone, that no one would quite understand what you're dealing with. A couple of weeks ago, we interviewed Keith McCants, and he had a similar situation. He spiraled into depression and even suffered addiction. Can you take us through that part of your journey, but also how you were able to overcome all that?
Yeah, I mean, that was rough because, again, most people don't understand what it's like to be on top of the sports world and to be one of the best in the world at what you do, and to just have it snatched from you like that, before you know it, it's gone. There's not many people you can talk to about that. And when I was having the issues that I was having, and everybody was like, oh, it's just part of your injury. It's natural that you're still in pain. I'm like, no, this is not natural pain. So, between that and, coaches trying to get me to go back to the team doctor, and I'm like, no, I'm not doing it, because I just knew something wasn't right. So between all of that and just seeing guys playing that you're better than, and it's like, I got to watch y'all out here doing what I love to do when I'm better than y'all. And, I'm like, this is my dream. This is what I was supposed to do. So to have to watch other people do that, that was like very, very stressful for me. That took me to a dark place, because again, that was the thing that I always knew that I would do with my life, because no matter what field I lined up on, I dominated everybody that I played against. You have a hard time finding anybody who will tell you that they got the best of me on the football field. That just didn't happen. So to have it taken from me, that really did something to me. And it took me a while to get over that. It wasn't until I just really, really had to tell myself, you're better than this. You have the power and the ability to defeat this, just like you have the power and ability to do everything else that you ever wanted to do in life. So, I just had to, figure out, okay, what is it going to take for me to get this done? And once I figured out, okay, let's find something different that motivates you, that's going to get that same attention and energy from you. Let's pour all of that energy into something that you love. And that's what I started to do. And once I got out of that point, that's when I decided to write a book about it all, in hopes that, maybe, just maybe, that it would help somebody else out at some point in their life if they were experiencing those same issues. Because it's hard to talk to people about that, because all people see is the big, strong football player. They don't see the human being. All they see is the gladiator. They don't think the gladiator has feelings. Like, no.
Right.
So it's hard to relay that to people and get them to understand that, hey, underneath all these guns and everything else, there's a human being.
As you know, that Tua Tagovailoa just got drafted by the Dolphins, and obviously he has some injury woes here and there. What advice would you give him entering this NFL season? Should he get into the momentum and start to play as soon as possible, or would you tell him to take a chill pill and take a year off?
I wouldn't tell him to go with the momentum. I wouldn't tell him to take a chill pill. What I would tell him is, your body. Don't let anybody pressure you into doing something you don't feel like you're comfortable doing. If your body isn't ready yet, don't do it. But if your body is ready and you can go give it the whole 1,000% that he knows he loves to give people, then go give them that. If he's truly ready, go dominate. Go do what you do best. But if you have any doubts about it and you don't feel ready, take your time. But again, if you're ready to be the beast that you are, go do work.
When you were overcoming all that, who, I guess, did you meet with that really invested in you and poured life into you? I guess served as mentors through this rough season of your life.
Honestly, I didn't never really talk to anybody. It was more of me just saying, okay, you're better than this. You cannot let this defeat you. It was more of the competitor in me, and more of me, my desire for greatness that I relied on to say, hey, we got to figure this out, because we're not going out like this. We're not going down this road. We will not be a statistic. We are not going to be that guy. You are better than this. So, I just had to, again, come up with things that I knew would promote growth within myself, that would allow me to step outside of that box that I was currently in, to be the best version of me that I could be, even given the past that I had gone through.
Who was your biggest role model in football that was older than you and played professionally?
Played professionally. Honestly, Barry Sanders. I love that guy.
Yes.
I love Barry Sanders. So, he was always one of my favorites. But I also got to give a shout out to my older brother. He's actually somebody who definitely inspired me in the game of football. Watching him go out and do the things that he did against people that were much bigger than him, never showed any fear, always, boom, was up to the task. So I got to give him credit too. He definitely inspired me as well as Barry. Yes, the two of them.
It's amazing. Barry Sanders has come up in every conversation in these past several weeks.
Why is that?
Did you not watch him play?
I hardly remember. Justin was a little bit older than I was, so.
If you love football, that's a name that you definitely know. And this is a man that did things I still have not seen replicated to this day.
Wow.
I mean, there were like maybe 5, 6, 7 guys that would pounce on him. And somehow he would just squirt out of that and he gone.
Yes, Barry Sanders.
Here's another question. Obviously, a lot of freshmen in Alabama or in college football won't have a regular spring season or regular summer per se. What would you tell that kid that, he had a great high school career and obviously the summer is going to be so scaled down? What would you tell him entering this college football season?
I would definitely tell him to make sure that he's taking advantage of all of his free time. Work out, run as much as you can, be in shape, because that conditioning test on that first day of practice, it's real. It's going to be brutal. You got to be ready for the conditioning test. So on top of that, I would also tell him to watch as much end zone copy of film as you can, because that end zone copy, it just allows you to see the field from a perspective of, okay, if you were playing, I can see the same thing. Okay, what do I do on this situation? What do I do on that situation? So yeah, as much end zone copy as possible, and just to work out, run, get in the best shape of your life, because 2-a-days hurt.
That never changes through the ages, no doubt.
No.
There's one question I have to ask you, dealing with today's game. What is your overall take, from a player of your position about today's game? I feel like it's turning into glorified flag football, and the physicality and what made football is being just stripped away. That's my opinion, but I really am interested to hear your take on that.
I understand the whole desire for player safety. I get that. But at the end of the day, you signed up for football, not cheerleading, not the debate team, not the math club. Football, which is a very violent sport. I was actually talking to Gerald Dixon and Freddie Millens the other day. Funny thing came up. The comment that they both wanted to make to me was, I don't think you would finish a game right now if you were still playing. I would be kicked out of almost every game for targeting, which I wasn't that bad. But, so for me, it's all about the big hit. I think that they definitely take the big hit out of football, because now when you watch film, you see how many guys pull up now on receivers. Oh, it's like, is he going to hit him? Is he going to hit him? Then all of a sudden he just runs past. He's like, oh, God. Y'all have made football soft.
Which player in college football that really excites you that you saw last season? It's like, this guy is going to be the next big thing.
I gotta say, Jalen Waddell. Oh my God! You throw that kid the ball, and it's like you never know what you're gonna get when he touches the ball. Man, he's very, very exciting to watch. I'm looking forward to seeing what he does this year. I think he's gonna put up numbers this season. But yeah, I think he's going to put up some very, very special numbers this year.
And speaking of last season, one of the things that really stuck out the most was the defense wasn't what we're expected, as Alabama fans, seeing. And one of the big arguments, or maybe even excuses, was, well, we were starting 5 freshmen or more. But if I recall back in 1999, when you and I were both there, how many we had 5 freshmen, including yourself, playing? You, Kenny King, Jarrett Johnson, Kendall Moorhead, Salim Rashid. So what exactly is different? Because y'all were still able to make it go, but for some reason this past season in Tuscaloosa, things didn't exactly work out.
The majority of our defense was freshmen and sophomores. um, it goes back to want to. How bad do you want to do something? I heard a lot of people this past season saying, guys are young, this, that. That's never been an applicable excuse for me, because again, when you sign up to play Alabama football, you're signed up to play whether you're young, old, crippled, or crazy. You know what you signed up for. So when you put that helmet on, that jersey on, there's a standard to be upheld. Whether you're 18 or 21, there's no difference. Because the guy across from you, he's not going to ask you, hey, are you 18? Okay, I'll take it easy. No, they ain't going to ask that. They're going to go out there and give you that same work as if you were a junior or senior. So for me, the excuses don't fly. I say, when you got a job to do, you man up, you do your job. So hopefully, this year will be a better year. And because again, the standard of Alabama football has always been defense. Never has Alabama football been offense first, defense second. This past season was the first time I've ever seen it. So, I'm looking forward to a return to what we're known for, defense. Go out there, do your job, and do it well. No matter who you're junior, senior, freshman. Because again, when you put these on, the standard is, the standard. The standard is here. You're going to either live up to it or you're not. And if you're not, then you might want to go to Arkansas, Ole Miss, somewhere else.
Are you a Mac Jones fan, or you think freshman quarterback Bryce Young should start?
Well, I hadn't seen Bryce Young play. I've seen some of his highlights. He looked pretty good. Mac stepped in and did a good job. For us. When Tua was hurt. I think it's going to be one of those things that just has to play out. My biggest thing is I just want a quarterback that's not going to turn the ball over.
not too much to ask.
Right. Just let the defense do what they do. Don't turn the ball over, and we'll be fine.
What advice you got for Jalen Hurts? Obviously, people are saying he's not a quarterback, but he surprisingly got selected to the Eagles second round. What's your advice to Jalen Hurts?
I couldn't be happier for a player than Jalen. Just the whole way the whole story played out, from him being replaced by Tua, then him coming back in, having to replace Tua to win against Georgia, then going to Oklahoma, taking that team to the playoffs. I couldn't be happier for a guy. The advice that I would give Jalen, you are Jalen. Nobody else is Jalen. Keep them out of your head. Don't ever let them make you second guess yourself or question where you are and why you're there. You're there for a reason. Do what you've done your entire life and let your words speak through your actions by going out there and proving them wrong. That is the biggest thing you can do to people who have doubts in you, is prove them wrong. Let your talent speak for itself. Keep working. Keep doing what you do. I love seeing you do what you do. I have all the confidence in the world that he's going to go on and he'll be successful, because there's no block. It's not written in stone that he has to do X, Y, and Z. He has the ability to do whatever he puts his heart to. So just do what you do best and win.
Justin, any more questions?
Yeah, I want to go back to you. What you endured is something that you talked about earlier, kind of that it's not really glorified or glamorized, the other side of the NFL. The only part that we see in the NFL as well as college is, all the big contracts, all the glory, and like you said, gladiators and what gladiators get for being who they are. But what's not talked about enough is the things that you face, which are very real and need to be talked about more. And like going through the injuries, going through the bad surgeries that didn't repair right, and then overcoming depression. And that ultimately led you to write your book, The Unraveling of a Man Who Bleeds Crimson. Can you talk to us a little bit about that and just how important it is for guys like yourself who went through all that to have a voice and for people to hear that story?
It's like anything else in life. If you keep something bottled up for long enough, it's bound to explode at some point. But you just want to make sure when that explosion happens that it's a controlled explosion and not something that's outside of your norm or what you would do. Because that's what happens in a lot of cases. People are depressed and other issues. They don't talk to people and it just eats away at them. And that one day when it just becomes too much for them, that's when you usually see bad things happen. So, you have to find the appropriate outlet to do that. And again, when you're a big, strong football player, nobody really wants to talk to you about your feelings and your emotions. That's pretty much, hey, leave them at the door. Don't bring those over here because you're the guy that we're watching on TV and you're supposed to be the man that's out there destroying other men. We don't want to hear about your feelings. All we want to see is you destroy what's in front of you.
Come on. I like that. Justin, you got one more before we close.
Hey, I want to hear about your 15-year-old son who's 6'3", 6'4", 255 pounds.
Oh man, I want to hear that.
I want to know where he's at, and then and how close is he to being as dominant as you were?
Honestly, he does not play sports. Oh God!
What? Wait, really?
What? I've been trying to get him to play football. He will not do it. My mom tried to get him to play. She bribed him. She offered him TVs, PlayStations, cash, you name it. He's been offered it to play. He doesn't want to play. So, hey, you can't force him to play. And I just look at him. I'm like, hey, man, you got a lot of talent sitting in that body that people would kill for to be not using it now. I'm like, you really should be using these skills. So it hurts to see all that talent not being used. It does.
Wow. Yeah. Sometimes, these kids sometimes don't go the same path as their dad. Some do, but don't do as well as their dad, or vice versa. Sometimes they do better than their dad, like Steve Curry. What advice would you tell a high schooler entering into college? What advice do you give them, when they're going to enter that Alabama red shirt?
If you get redshirted, I would say don't take it personally. Don't feel like it's a slight against you. Just look at it as it's just more time for you to sharpen your skills before you unveil them to the world. Make sure you take advantage of that time and make that blade as sharp as you can so that when you do unveil it to the world, it is something nasty, something they'll never forget, something they'll remember for the rest of their lives. Like, hey, where did this kid come from? And then you can say, hey, I was over here last year just making sure that my toolbox was full of all the tools that I needed to light it up for you.
Wow. What a story. What a motivation. Any closing words, Justin?
Now, I would like to know, you said you couldn't get your son to play football. How come you never could get your cousin, Jermaine Funny Mane Johnson, to play football?
He briefly played Little League football. I think he realized that, he didn't really want to be out there with guys like me. Yeah. Because, growing up, we would all take our football equipment home from Little League practice. And we would have our own games at home in the backyard. So a lot of cousins realized real quickly, like, we're going to leave him alone. We're going to stay away from that.
Well, there you have it. Marvin Constant, former Alabama player, one of the greats. What a story. I've actually got to know you a little bit more this past week. I became an Alabama fan these past couple of years thanks to Justin, and I could definitely feel that Alabama vibe, that energy that this school provides, like the pride. You can sense like the spirit of excellence, which just happened before Nick Saban. I know that. This is way before this goes on from Bear Bryant, and that brings a good spirit into the school. Ready for some poll questions?
I am.
Justin's ready. What is your favorite flavor of fudge? Chocolate, peanut butter, red velvet, or salted caramel?
Gotta go with the chocolate.
Justin?
I got to go with the original chocolate. I don't think there's any better.
Peanut butter is winning 55% and chocolate at 33%, red velvet at 11%, and salted caramel at 0%. So peanut butter is winning. I pick peanut butter. I think it tastes great. Anyways, Marvin, thanks for coming. What is the best way for people to reach you online?
You can find me on Instagram at Constant45. I'm on Facebook, Marvin Constant. And I'll say stay tuned. I'm actually in the process of finishing up my new book, 40 Mental and Physical Fitness at 40 plus. You know, just teaching people that, you know, you can still live a healthy lifestyle. You can still rock the guns.
Yes, sir.
And can you tell us about your first book and where they can buy it?
That book is actually done. It was all sold out. It was 2 months and it's over. So
wow.
you can't find them anymore. But you can definitely find the new book when it gets ready to come out. I'm thinking about having it released on my birthday, August 29th, my 41st birthday. Because, again, I want people to know at 40, you can still.
Yes, sir.
You rip the shreds.
You look like you can play right now, by the way.
Look like. That's the key word.
And Justin, what is the best way to reach you to talk to you about Alabama football history?
Hey, you're not ready to run those 110s again, are you?
Not at all.
Oh, man. Well, first of all, you know, I was kind of thinking of what would be the perfect way, I guess, to summarize everything you've been through. And I actually found a Bible verse. It says, "Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because having stood that test, that person will receive the crown of life the Lord has promised to those who love him." And I can't think of anyone more perfect that symbolizes than you. You've faced so many tests, so many trials, and by the grace of God, you've overcome all of it. And it's just amazing the ministry that you have for people who are going through what you went through, who think they don't have a voice and that no one gets it. And it's just amazing just to see how what you went through, your journey, can do to empower them. Yeah. So I thank you for sharing that story with us today.
No problem. Anytime. You know, anybody that I can ever help, because again, what I went through, I wouldn't wish it upon anybody, you know, because it definitely tests every piece of your mental tenacity, be it far beyond any measures you would ever think in life. So, you know, it takes you to a place you couldn't imagine. So to be able to pull yourself out of it, it definitely requires a lot of skills.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. As far as how anybody can reach me, I'm on Twitter at JustinRiley7, Instagram at JustinRiley_7. I also help contribute to the Sportscast Twitter and Instagram account. Reminder, next week on Tuesday the 23rd, Alabama basketball great Erwin Dudley will be on, so stay tuned for that. But I want to thank you so much, Marvin, for coming on. It's always great, one, to have one of the guys from my day, but also having someone with a story as great as yours. And like I said, it gives people the opportunity to just overcome what they're going through. And that's just a blessing. So thank you so much for that.
Anytime. I'm always available.
Marvin Constant, thanks so much for coming on. And guys, yeah, stay tuned on the sportscast.net, thesportscast.net for the latest and greatest. This Friday, we got a special with Ryan Krista, talk about Liberty University basketball. It's one of our second teams that we talk about here on the Sportscast a lot. But to end it a good night, thank you so much, Marvin. Thank you, Justin. And hopefully you guys have a great night and a great week.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Roll Tide.
All right. Roll Tide.